Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich talks with community leaders about issues in the public safety arena, sponsored by River Ridge Hardware.
Well, good morning. This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich with the Sheriff's Report. For our radio listeners, we're going to go through some PowerPoints, so if you're really interested, you can always log on to Spokane Talks Online and view the podcast portion so you can get a better idea of what we talked about, see the slides yourself, and be able to get a better understanding of what is going on. In studio with me today, I have the training director for the Spokane County Sheriff's Office, Tony Anderman. Tony, his last job, he worked for the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission as your final job was assistant commander, correct?
That is correct, Sheriff. Yeah.
And when Tony, I heard that Tony was leaving CJTC, I knew that if I could convince him to come to work for the Sheriff's Office, I would inherit one of the best curricular writers in the state of Washington. And Tony, you do a great job in that arena. You have brought the Sheriff's Office training unit to the next level, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. But sadly, folks, we have a lot of myths going on right now concerning our training, and a lot of criticism, quite frankly, unjustified. A lot of that is because people just don't want to take the time to understand that law enforcement has been doing all the training that all these politicians and activists demand for a very long time. And I think it's time that we start working on the myths of what's going on. Recently, we were in the news, and Vinny, if you want to take a look at the first PowerPoint there, it's the web copy of an article by the Spokesman Review that states Knezovich proposes pilot for shorter training program for new deputies to State Training Commission. And then the next one, Commission votes unanimously against shortened training academy for the Sheriff's Office. The amazing part about that is there's nothing short about our training proposal. As a matter of fact, we require more hours of training than CJTC has for their certificate, and we'll go through that and we'll talk about it. And Tony, I was at our Citizen Advisory Board last night, and last month I believe you addressed them, talked to them about our training. And one of the advisory board members said, Sheriff, what happened? I said, well, what do you mean, what happened? He said, well, that reporter sent in this room. She listened to everything that Tony had to say. We thought she understood and grasped what you were trying to do here. How did those newspaper articles turn out the way they did? Now, folks, that may be something you might want to ask the Spokesman Review, because these articles do not reflect what we are doing. And I don't know how we can convey it any differently. You talked to the young reporter, I talked to her. She even told me, I get it, this isn't about shortening training. You're basically cutting out wasted time and filling it in with good, solid, rock-solid training. So we have a quandary, Tony, because for some reason the media wants to paint our training as something. I don't know if it's trying to follow national rhetoric or not. I have no idea. But folks, if you take a look at what we're trying to do, is this. We are trying to develop an academy structure that integrates our FTO program into our basic academic curricula.
That's correct.
And, Tony, one of the reasons we're doing this is because we send people to the academy, they graduate from the academy, and within 2 to 3 weeks of hitting the streets, they're walking, they're quitting. Can you give us a kind of an idea of what you're seeing in that realm and why this approach is a little bit different than others, but at the same time is unique, and unique enough, quite frankly, that we have people from outside the state of Washington watching what we're doing. We have people inside the state of Washington hoping we succeed in the direction we're going. Give us a little outline about the philosophy on this.
So just briefly, Sheriff, what we're trying to do is put our deputies into the car as soon as we can. So the first Friday of the first week of the academy, we place them in the car in order to get acquainted with their field training officer, with the training and with the vehicle itself, with all the equipment in the vehicle. So that way, by the time they're finished with the academic portion of the academy in a sterile environment and they get into the car full time, they're not as stressed. So that's what we're seeing is in the academy, it's a sterile environment, it's a safe environment, it's choreographed. In the car, it is not. Situations come to them fairly quickly, and they have to think and problem solve and critically think. So what we're trying to do is set them up for success. So by the time they actually start doing the job full time, they're acquainted with all the variables that are in the vehicle, outside of the vehicle, and in the community. So.
And I think that we've seen some success because we've put people through our academy already. And folks, we'll talk about a little bit about the nuances of the politics behind why the Criminal Justice Training Academy doesn't want to see us go this direction. And it really comes down to the fact that they are no longer an accredited institution. Their curricula is no longer standardized and certified by anybody. And they know that we're fully aware that they really don't have standards for their curricula. One of the most important things, if you go to the next slide, is everything we do in the Sheriff's Office is based on our core values. I firmly believe that training without values, without proper values backing them up, it's worthless. I can give people training all day long, folks, but if I'm not giving them training that is based on the values of our community, based on the values of our profession, it's worthless. And that is what we try to do. So our values, the bedrock of our values are summed up in one word: honor. Honor means all those things that attach to it: trustworthiness, integrity, all that. All those words people hang on walls. Well, I have a philosophy that the reason I don't have all those words hanging on the wall is if I didn't hire you with all that, I messed up anyway. You should have that built into your fabric before you ever go any further into our agency. We should have hired you with those capabilities. So I shouldn't have to stress those values because you should have those values. The next level of the bedrock of our philosophy is training, education, and innovation. We stress that, and Tony, some people don't understand that we're internationally recognized when it comes to the training that we provide. We've had people from Israel, Australia, Micronesia, Japan, come to Spokane for training. IADLES, you were successful in getting us recognized by them, and we received an award by IADLES for being one of the first, well, I should say, being the first agency, law enforcement agency in the United States to ever have our training certified through IADLES. Can you talk just a little bit about why that was important?
Yeah, it's important. First, IADLES is the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement. So it was important for us to set an example that we're able to take those certification standards with curriculum development and actually put it in place into our department. One, because we have to make sure that our lesson plans are legally defensible. And so IADLES has a very good and a very tight process of observing or auditing those lesson plans. So when we put forward a few examples of what we were doing, and mind you, one of those curriculum lesson plans was one of the ones I wrote at CJTC. We just enhanced it with all the testing process, pre and post testing, the evaluation process, and we were able to get it certified. And by using their example and using their process, that's what we've done in our academy as well. So we've used that process, that model of auditing, and used that in writing our academy curriculum. So
We took it one more step, though. We had all of our trainers and our FTOs
that is correct.
certified through IATLAS also.
That is correct. Yes. Yep.
So we do all that. We take that extra time, expense, everything else, so we can reach the next level of our core values, which is to develop competent law enforcement officers.
Yes.
Because folks, if they are competent, they get develop the most important aspect next, which is confidence. Because they have to be competent and confident out in the field, knowing that they've been trained well, knowing how to deal with situations, because it's when somebody doesn't have confidence and are competent in their job, that's when the bad things happen. That's when those bad mistakes happen. So we strive very hard to make sure they're highly trained, highly educated. We use a lot of innovative practices to ensure that they have that confidence and that competency out on the street, which gives us the next level, which is our commitment to our community. Because you have to have commitment to the community before you'll ever develop professionalism. Once you hit professionalism, we have them focus on the service we provide this community. And that is what our job is. That's all, that sums up what we do. We serve this community with the best trained, highly competent, professional law enforcement officers that we can develop. Because folks, we will never gain your trust if we don't do this. And that is the end game, the public trust. So CJTC has 720 hours and you get a certificate, correct?
Correct. Peace officer certification.
All right. So this slide, and for those folks listening on the radio, this is a slide of a timeline that we currently have in the Sheriff's Office. We have a pre-academy, which is 1 week.
Correct.
We have a BLE Academy, and the first week of it is admin, and 18 weeks of academy time. And because we found the training to be so deficient coming out of the academy, we originally added a week post-academy, then we added 2 weeks post-academy. Now you tell me we're up to 6 weeks post-academy, trying to ensure that they have all the knowledge base that they should have gained in the academy, but didn't.
Correct.
And we added 2 more weeks. We're at 4, we're at 6 now, because CJTC cut 100 hours of defensive tactics, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Tony, how important is defensive tactics to the job these kids are doing out there?
It's unfortunate with the community member. I don't want to say our community, but you have individuals thinking that defensive tactics is a bad thing. It's actually the start of defusing the situation, the show of force, the presence of the individual, teaching them how to take control of the situation through their presence is de-escalation. And they've taken 100 hours of defensive tactics out of the academy, and now they're having them watch videos. So there's no hands-on, there's no practice. It's watching a video, and then you get your certification through that process.
After that, we spend 12 to 16 weeks in an FTO training car, field training car, where they are mentored by a field training officer in a phased philosophy of we tell them how to do it, we show them how to do it, and then we expect them to do it.
Correct.
And here in the state of Washington, there's no requirement for an FTO program, is there?
There's no RCW or WAC that dictates the requirement for that.
And here in the state of Washington, you can go to work. I could hire somebody right off the street and put them in a police car and tell them to go out and do the job without an FTO program, correct?
That is correct.
Without
Yes.
going to the academy, correct?
For 6 months. That
For
is
6
correct.
months. Folks, when I came from the state of Washington, I was a police officer in the state of Washington, or in the state of Wyoming, I should say. And I came to the state of Washington. I worked the streets of Olympia for 6 months before I ever went to the equivalency academy in the state of Washington. I basically had an FTO. I read all the laws of the state of Washington, and that was it. You know, I spent some time in a training car and went out and did the job. So when we hear these discussions about, oh, there's heavy liability about putting these rookies in a training car, what do you have to say about that?
That's interesting you say that, Sheriff. One, we have to make sure that the community understands that you as the sheriff, we do everything we can to make sure they're properly trained with the skills, knowledge, and ability to make sure they get, before they get in a car. However, putting them in the vehicle is that what you're discussing, right? Putting them in the vehicle, we can do that. There's no headaches around that. However, we have to ask ourselves, what are the liabilities? Would we do that? And our agency, we have the process to make sure that they don't get in that car without the appropriate training, reasonable training. In smaller agencies in the state, they may not. They may have to put them in that car or in that vehicle right off the bat. Let's take the example of the 240 hours or 260 hours of reserve training. They receive 240 to 260 hours of reserve training, and they're able to go out and work in that vehicle. We provide over 1,100 hours of training, and we can't do that. We have to send them to the academy. So,
Right. And when you take a look at that, we won't allow our rookie officers in the academy, our academy, to actually get involved in the instances until they
Well
go
said.
through defensive tactics.
Yep.
Before they're qualified with their weapon, which is usually around 11 weeks into the academy
That is correct.
phase. So it's not like they're out there doing the job. They're basically observing the job. That FTO is actually linked with the academy. The FTO understands exactly what is being taught that week in the academy.
That is correct.
That FTO has the assignment of taking that academic base, showing that new hire, the rookie, how that actually applies on the street. You know, how do we actually turn this curricula, this academic knowledge, into here's what it really looks like out on the street. So that was one of the things that CJTC used to say, well, we're not going to approve this, was liability. Well, the thing is, it's my liability.
It is your liability, correct?
And in the state of Washington, they don't even have the standard in the FTO cars. So I was dumbfounded when I heard that reasoning for what's going on.
To briefly add to that liability, as soon as they get peace officer certification, you still take on the liability as soon as they reach our vehicle the day after the academy. So
Yeah, the liability always rests here.
that is correct.
It's just the way it is. The slide that we're showing right now is CJTC grants 49 states reciprocity into Washington. I lateraled from the state of Wyoming. I went straight to, I started my career here in Washington in Olympia, and went straight into an FTO car and straight out on the street. 6 months later, I went through a 2-week basic equivalency. So when we take a look at that, the slide I'm showing now, Tony, is the slide where we show all the different states and where we rank as far as the training that we provide. And for our folks on the radio, CJTC's Basic Academy is only 720 hours.
Correct.
Our academy is 1,178 hours. We modeled ours similarly to the Washington State Patrol, which is, I believe, at just about 1,200 hours, little over
take,
1,200
yeah.
hours. So we modeled exactly after them. They have an academic portion, they have an FTO portion, just like we do. And Washington State doesn't have to go to CJTC. Washington State Patrol has their own academy.
Correct.
And we modeled our academy based on the State Patrol, which, you know, should ring some warning bells for folks that read these articles going, hey, wait a minute. How can they say you've shortened your training when you've actually have more training hours than CJTC?
That is correct.
One of the things that that you've been working on is the fact that CJTC can review other training philosophies.
Absolutely.
And they can
Part of their
approve
duty.
them. As a matter of fact, they have a mandate to do so.
Correct.
And they were working with us for the last 2 years trying to get this done. They actually promised to come last January and audit our last academy.
That is correct. Yes.
And they bailed on us on it.
They did not come and audit our academy, no.
Yeah. So again, folks, some of the politics that go on, that's one thing, Tony, I don't think I'll miss at all about what I do. I will not miss the politics. I enjoy going out. I enjoy trying to create the best agency we can for the folks out there. I enjoy the law enforcement sides. I can't stand the politics anymore. There's a reason nothing gets done in government, folks, is because people want to protect empires. And that's just what is happening here. People want to protect empires. What CJTC, and Vinny, we're going to skip a few slides. We're going to go down to slide it would be 15. What we wanted to do was simply collaborate with CJTC. And I think this is one of the most important parts that I need you to explain to folks. CJTC had an opportunity to join with the state of Oregon when they rewrote their Basic Law Enforcement Academy.
Correct.
WSU is doing the audit portion of that. We've actually asked WSU to do the audit of our training academy also.
That is correct.
CJTC refused to do that. And why is it so important for us to have WSU come in and do that peer review type audit?
Well, let's start out with Oregon. Yes, Washington State University is actually helping them write the academy, and they were invited. CJTC was invited to the table, the Criminal Justice Training Commission. It's important for the Sheriff's Office to have our content audited or research-based, so that way we can show the validity in what we're doing. If it's not working out on the street, well, the old adage is the officer didn't learn anything unless behavior changes, and we want to make sure that behavior changes. So having Washington State University come in and actually do a research project on our program can demonstrate to you, the sheriff, the community, staff, is it working? And if it's not working, where's the gaps and how can we fill in those gaps? That's the criticality behind that process with Washington State University.
And during our process and our discussions with CJTC, we said we're willing to pay for all this. We don't want any state money. We're willing to get all this done, and as a matter of fact, we will give you every ounce of the curricula that we develop, because they don't have standardized curricula right now. They've spent 6 figures on one set of curricula that they never implemented, and I guess
Correct.
are redoing.
Correct.
There is no standardization and no standards, no core competencies within the curricula that we have here at the state. As a matter of fact, we had this discussion with them of, well, the Sheriff's Office using our 2014 curricula. Well, that's all you have. Your curricula is that far out of date. That's all we had. So we've been improving that curricula all the way through. One of the things that people keep talking about is this we're shortening. Folks, we're not shortening the academic portions of this. We've actually expanded it. And one of the areas that we provide more training than CJTC is one of those I-940 requirements is CIT training. We developed a 40-hour CIT training module. They only train 22 hours. And here's why that's important, folks. The reason that's so important is because CJTC doesn't do a 40-hour training, when a new deputy comes back to the agency from the academy, I have to send them to a 40-hour CIT training so they meet state standards. With our academy, it's built in. We train them from the get-go on that 40-hour model. And you know, that's what is wrapped into that 1,178 hours of total experience is 740 academic hours. And Vinny, let's skip down to slide 20, which addresses I-940. I-940 is new law that says we have to have certain training and have it meet the state requirements. We do that. CJTC has not done that yet. They're working towards it, but they're still not quite there. And Vinny, if we can skip down to slide 23. And here it is, folks. The academy time for the Sheriff's Office, we have 18 weeks. They have 18 weeks. We have 740 hours of training. They have 720. And actually, Vinny, if we can skip down to slide 25, the Sheriff's Office has a total of 1,178 hours. They have 720. And the next slide shows two timelines, the new timeline that we have and the old timeline. Folks, this is the most important part right here, so you understand what we've done as far as shortening anything. We eliminated 4, now 6 weeks of wasted post-academy time. That is now done in the 18 weeks of the academy. We are confident that they are coming out of the academy and we do not need to do this anymore. We took a month off, or another week off the front end, so we don't have this wasted 2-week period at the front end. That is 5 total weeks that we were able to remove from our current timeline because we now have the proper structure and we don't have to fix all the damage done and the holes and the gaps that we find coming out of the current academy. We have to now have, you know, we had 4, now 6 weeks of post-academy. We don't have that anymore. So when we talk about, and they talk about, and the media talks about the sheriff shortening training, it's not true. We've actually increased the training. And one of the most important parts, going back to that, that timeline, is CJTC, you can get your certificate in 720 hours, and you can come back to my agency, fail the training car, and you're still certified in the state of Washington.
That is correct.
Not under our scenario. You have to complete every ounce of it. You have to show that you are competent all the way through the training car, because that's the final test, is the training car.
That is correct.
And if you can't make it through the training car, you do not get a certificate. You are not certified in this state. But under CJTC, you can fail a training car and still be certified. Tony, I really appreciate all the work that you do and have done for the Sheriff's Office. Real quick, wrap up on what you think your next steps are as far as how you're going to take us to the next level. Where are we going?
Sheriff, our goal is hopefully we'll wrap this up with CJTC. Hopefully we'll get another opportunity to place us in front of them to get that certification. And if we do, the goal is to get our content audited and then go after national accreditation. If that occurs, we'll be one of the first agencies in the state of Washington to have that accreditation in place for the region and for the state. So that's exciting to do. That'll bring all of our instructors in a line and teach them how to actually process the curriculum correctly to a whole different standard, and we'll be held accountable to that standard.
So there it is, folks. We want to increase the level. We want to raise the bar. That's what we're trying to do here. We want to take the bar, put it up here so people have to meet that standard. This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich with the Sheriff's Report. Have a great day.
Here at River Ridge Hardware Garden Center, where we have all the plants and flowers that will spruce up your yard, from the lilacs for Spokane's Lilac City to awesome hanging baskets and pots that you can actually put the hanging baskets in. Here at River Ridge Hardware, we want to help you set up your landscape needs. Neighbors helping neighbors at River Ridge Hardware.
Thanks for watching. Ask the host a question, recommend a guest, or check out any of our other programs on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Sponsored by River Ridge Hardware.